Hello, this is Danny Suarez with Unleashed Consulting. Welcome to our Best Boss Bootcamp Minute. So today's Dear Danny letter comes from Dumbfounded in Dallas. And Dumbfounded writes, "How do I lead change?" So Dumbfounded, I think you're asking a whole bunch of questions in there. And I'm going to take a stab at letting you in on some of the secrets of change management or change leadership. So the first thing I want to start off with is one of my favorite quotes by Peter Senge, who's kind of a thought leader in the field of organizational development. And Peter says, people don't resist change, they resist being changed. Now, the reason I'm sharing that quote with you is because oftentimes we think about change management as the things that we need to do to the technical components of the change. How do we make this rollout easier? How do we gather people together in order to have them fully understand change? All of that stuff is great, but what we really need to pay attention to in change management when we're talking about people is the people component. How do we manage what needs to happen for people in order for them to, if not embrace the change, to at least welcome the change, acknowledge it, and work with it? So I want to share a couple things with you here. So I'm going to do a quick screen share. And these are two of my favorite tools of understanding and working with of change. So the first is this equation that we call the change equation. It's the considerations for change. And it says change equals the sum total of A plus B plus D being greater than X. Now, A is the dissatisfaction with the present condition, B is the desirability of the change, D is the practicality of change, and X is the cost of change. So essentially, you need to do some thinking, and I would really ask that you do this with colleagues or with at least one other learning partner. Oftentimes we get caught in our own mind limitations, our own frames of reference that aren't complete. So to think with your colleagues, how dissatisfied are folks with the present change? How much do they desire it? And what's the practical cost of the change? And have some conversations about each of these components. And then in a very fairly subjective, but a comprehensive way, think about whether the sum total of those things is greater than what people perceive as the cost of the change. And oftentimes this can give a really good roadmap into what you need to work on in order to make the change that we have an appetite for, right? So, and the second thing, just real quickly here, is a graph that I find really, really interesting that talks about, basically we can think of generally our populations in our workplace are divided into early adopters, pragmatists, conservatives, and laggards when it has to do with change. Now, what you notice is that most folks are in the pragmatists and the conservatives, and those are actually the folks that we want to concentrate on and work with. Those are the folks that you can really talk about this whole change equation. The early adopters, you've already got them. You don't need to really be concerned with them. And your laggards, quite frankly, they may not be able to come along for the ride. So oftentimes we spend all our attention on the laggards, right? The doomsayers, the negative Nancys, and we don't pay attention to what we really need to do, which is to move the pragmatists over and the conservatives over so that they're able to really, really embrace the change, work on them. That's where the real money is. And then the last thing I wanted to share with you is it's often helpful to think about. So first of all, if you Google stages of change for human beings, you'll find a whole bunch of different things, and they all kind of come in together around a common way of thinking of change, which I think one of the easiest ways of looking at it is if you've ever studied Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of death and dying, or grief and grieving. We really can talk about those 5 stages as being what we can expect people who are in change want to go through. So hold on one second, I'll get that for you. So the 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. So those aren't perfect when we're describing change, but they come really, really close. So I would suggest that you really think about that as you're working through this with your people. Are they in denial? Are they in anger? Are they sad? Are they, just know that that more often than not, people go through these stages with change and end up in a place of acceptance, but it takes some time. There's a lot of reasons for that, and a lot of it, I think of it in terms of systems theory, and systems take a while to change. So we are systems in and of ourselves. So all of that makes a lot of sense. So give yourself some time. Think about with your colleagues and your coworkers about the change equation and the bell curve. And then start to look at, well, where are our folks and where do we need, maybe we need to move them along, gently move them along. And just know that as human beings, that's what we do. We move through the human condition, and the human condition often has predictable stages of emotion. So with change management, we can more or less expect that people will be very resistant, start to break down, and then come to accept and embrace if you handle each stage with caring, empathetic leadership gloves. Okay, I hope that was helpful, and we'll talk to you next time. All right, thanks so much. This is Danny Ceballos with Unleash Consulting and the Best Boss Bootcamp Minute. Bye now.